I've just had a really interesting experience on the bus, and it kind of bears sharing because I found myself a little bit challenged by it. There were three girls who were taking over the space, like noise, 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 and that's fine, that's to be expected these days. They weren't being overly rude, but very, very, very loud. So that's absolutely fine too. And I sat there and I sat there, but eventually they started to talk about another girl who it sounded like also went to their school. The girls were like 12, 13 years old. They're not very old, so I have a lot to learn. They were talking about this girl, and it turns out the girl is Chinese. So these girls started to impersonate, kind of, but probably not a very good impersonation, because they went into this full-blown, over-the-top, stereotyped Chinese voice, like high-pitched kind of noise, and I won't imitate it because it is offensive. It went on for ages. Then they changed the subject. I'd glanced over, they looked back, I left it, I ignored it. I felt bad for ignoring it, but then I thought, I'm a middle-aged man, these are three young girls, and you really feel quite uncomfortable as a man, especially approaching absolute strangers when they're young girls like that. But my conscience was saying to me, I need to say something, because they started it up again, and it seemed that there were like two black girls and one white girl, and this kind of is important to the story. So the white girl was like, oh, let's talk about that girl again, and then again the friend opposite her went into the high-pitched, stereotyped Chinese stupid voice, so loud that everyone on the bus would hear it. The bus was fairly empty, but there was one or two people there. And it carried on and on. I moved my seat to the seat closer to them, and I was like, by this stage, you know when you're fuming and you're like, this is so wrong, this is so full-on racist and just nasty, kind of bitchy, and I really hope that they're not so unkind to the girl in school. So you're at the point where you think, maybe I'll say something, and I'm so sort of annoyed about it, I might say something really in an angry tone. And I thought, no, that's not the best way to approach this. They're young girls, I'm a school teacher, I'm used to kids being inappropriate and thinking, right, how do I approach that? So I was in the seat closer to them, and I leaned in and I kind of gestured for them just to lean towards me, and in the most quiet voice I said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you may not be aware that what you're doing here may be perceived as very racist. It says, because you're impersonating someone who clearly you're saying is Chinese and sounds like it's someone in your school. And I says, that comes across as really unkind. And I says, but you seem like lovely girls, you seem like very nice friends, and I'm sure it's not your intention to be so cruel and thoughtless in what you're doing. But, you know, this is a public space. You could offend other people on this bus who may be Chinese, who may not be Chinese. I said, who may be white, like me. However, I said, in particular, I said, you two girls are black. And surely you've come across maybe racism, or your families have talked about it. I said, because it's very commonplace. And it's a shame to think that you, as young people, are perhaps carrying this on and not knowing that you are. So it was quite nice, because I spoken to them gently. They apologised to me, and I said, well, you know, there's no need to apologise to me. I says, but, you know, if you could be sensitive to others and think about what you're saying and who it might hurt, that would be great. And I said, thank you for listening. And they said, thank you to me, and I wish them a good evening. So that was all very nice. A woman sitting in the front, African background, beautiful, you know, the headdress and all very lovely, kind of older lady. As I was speaking to them, she was sort of turning around and giving me the thumbs up. I was like, oh, okay. I thought, well, that's nice. and she gestured to me. So I sat down beside her and she said, "Thank you." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "No need to thank me." I said, "But it needed to be said, it had to be said." And she agreed. Now, I felt like I'd done the right thing, because if I'd sat there and said nothing, what kind of person does that make me? I'm kind of complicit in the whole thing. I'm just saying, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'll be this like privileged white guy, and I'll let this three girls say what they bloody like. Excuse my language, but it's not on, is it? It's not on. But I felt I handled it in a more calm way than I felt like inside. Later on, the bus kind of stopped, and as it changed drivers, the girls were on and off thinking, "Oh, shall we get off? Shall we come back on? Shall we get off? Shall we come back on?" And I think they noticed as they came back on, there was an elderly Chinese man sat just in front of where they'd been sitting. And one of them in particular went over to the Chinese man and said, "I just want to say I'm sorry." And he said, For what? And she said, "In case anything I said or did offended you." And he said, "Okay, thank you." And that was it. Whether he'd noticed, he maybe did, he probably did. I mean, I noticed, and I was just as close. I thought that was a really nice thing for her to do, because she'd not just said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry" to me and maybe carry on some other time. She had thought about it. She realised the impact her words might have, and I kind of hope she's learned something. I hope the three of them have learned something, because racism isn't cool. You know, people say, "Oh, only white people can be racist." No, there were two black girls and a white girl. It was one of the black girls doing the high-pitched Chinese voice. Racism crosses back and forth, back and forth. It's all about thinking you're better than someone, thinking someone's more funny and unusual or weird than you are, when actually deep down we're all the same inside, and people need to start respecting that. And if we learn that from an early age, if people can gently remind or educate people, it is our place, it's everyone's place to say it, it's everyone's place. And I felt pretty bad about myself that I sat there for quite a long time and I didn't say anything. So yeah, it was a challenge, because you don't know what the response will be, but at the same time it's important to do the right thing. So I did the right thing. I feel quite proud of myself, because, well, I was, whoa, and that's an ambulance, and I was I can't be the sort of person I am and not speak up, but at the same time I'm like anyone else, and it's not always convenient to do the right thing. But if you do it in the right way, you might have an impact that's bigger than you think. That Chinese man felt better probably because of the apology. The older African woman thanked me again as she got off the bus, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I think it's really important that you do the right thing, because the impact on everyone was quite incredible. And I hope that these three girls have maybe learned something from that, because it really isn't acceptable. And at 12, 13 years old, you need to not be growing up with that mindset that you can just do what you like, say what you like, and not question how it might be perceived by others. I'm not saying they were racist, and that's half the trouble. I didn't want to say they were racist, but it was hideous what they were doing. Very, very cruel. So let's hope they'll reflect on that tonight. Maybe they'll speak up the next time someone does something similar. Who knows? Spread the love. We're all the same, aren't we? There, that's my big long message. Racism sucks, and I cannot be bothered with it anymore, so let's not do it. Speak up. I did, and I feel really good about myself, and there's a couple of people on that bus might have changed their minds about how they behave, and that older lady was especially sweet. No need to thank me. It's sad that people have to thank you for being a decent human being, but there we go. Anyway, there you go. Had to say it now before I get home from work, because